The morning broke with a splash that ripped me from sleep, followed by the frantic squawk of a goose, shrieking like a siren caught in a loop. I stumbled into my boots, heart pounding, and tore across the dew-soaked yard toward my private pond, half expecting a coyote or stray dog stirring trouble. But what I saw stopped me dead, a mix of rage and disbelief clawing at my chest. There, knee-deep in my water, fishing rod in one hand and a plastic wine glass in the other, stood Cheryl from the sub-EVY show next door. She yelped as my territorial goose snapped at her, her oversized sun hat floating away on the ripples. A soggy lawn chair lay tipped over in the mud, her tacky Bluetooth speaker blaring twangy country hits. It was a scene so absurd it could have been plucked from a fever dream, except this was no dream. Cheryl was trespassing on my land, acting like she owned the place. I stood on the muddy bank, my quiet retirement dream erupting into a fight I never wanted. That pond wasn't just water, it was my sanctuary, bought with every penny of my life. SAVYNGS. 30 years as a firefighter running into flames, hauling strangers from collapsing buildings had earned me this peace. I'd chosen this rural patch for its solitude, and the spring-fed pond was the heart of it. I'd restored it myself, stocking it with bass, catfish, and a handful of shimmering koi for good luck. I'd built the dock by hand, set benches under the willows, and strung solar lights for nights spent with my dog, Boomer, under a sky full of stars. That pond was mine legally, emotionally, spiritually. Seeing Cheryl treat it like her personal playground cracked something deep inside me. She hadn't wandered in by mistake. She'd hauled a full setup cooler, tackle box, that blaring speaker like she was staking a claim. For a moment I just stared, wondering if I'd lost my mind. Cheryl, oblivious, reeled in a wriggling catfish and hooped, raising her glass to the sky. Boomer barked, sharp and fierce, snapping me out of it. I cleared my throat, loud enough to scatter the crows. Cheryl spun mid-toast, blinking at me like I saw was the intruder. "Oh, hey, neighbor!" she chirped, wading toward the bank with zero shame. "Thought I'd enjoyed the community pond today. Perfect weather, right?" Community pond? The words hit like a punch. My fists clenched. Cheryl was the neighborhood's self-appointed queen, the kind who thought her HOA badge gave her rule over everything. Until now, she'd stuck to petty notes about grass length or mailbox colors. I'd kept my head down, hoping she'd leave me alone. Clearly, I'd underestimated her nerve. "This is private property," I said, voice steady but tight. "My pond. You're trespassing." Cheryl laughed, a grating cackle that set my teeth on edge. "Oh, come on," she said, wavooing me off. "Everyone knows the HOA owns all the green spaces around here. You're lucky I didn't invite the whole block for a barbecue." I was speechless, grappling with her sheer audacity. First, my land wasn't even under her HOA's jurisdiction. That was the whole point of buying it. Second, even if it were communal, which it wasn't, she'd still need permission to wade in like she owned it. I wasn't about to argue in the mud. "Pack it up, Cheryl," I said, pointing at her gear. "You're trespassing. Leave." Her face twisted into a smirk that screamed trouble. "We'll see about that," she said, gathering her things at a snail's pace, slipping dramatically like she was angling for a lawsuit. As her SUV peeled out of my driveway, I knew this wasn't a mix-up to laugh off. This was war. That evening, as fireflies flickered over the water, I walked the pond's edge with a hammer, nailing up no trespassing signs every 10 feet. I printed one in bold red, "Private pond. No public access. No fishing. No exceptions." Boomer trotted beside me, unaware of the battle lines I was drawing. But a voice in my head warned that Cheryl wouldn't be stopped by science. She had that stubborn, self-righteous energy that steamrolled reason. Sure enough, the next morning, fresh footprints led to the water, and an empty beer can bobbed near the dock. Cheryl wasn't just bold, she was taunting me, laughing in my face. I gave her one last chance, though my gut screamed it was pointless. I cancelled my errands, dragged a chair under the oak overlooking the pond, and waited with Boomer. By mid-morning, her SUV rumbled down my drive, country music blasting. She parked half on my grass, unloading a chair, tackle box, cooler, and a garish umbrella she stabbed into the ground like she was claiming the moon. The brazen disrespect was almost impressive. I approached, Boomer at my side. Cheryl looked up, smiling like we were old friends. "Morning, neighbor!" she chirped, adjusting her umbrella. "Hot one today. Perfect for fishing." "This is your last warning," I said, loud enough to cut through her music. "Private property. You're trespassing. Leave now." Cheryl didn't blink. She crossed her arms, cocking her hip. "Actually," she said like she was schooling a child, "this pond's communal green space, per the HOA charter. It's for everyone." I pulled a folded paper from my pocket, property survey deed boundary map. "Here's the proof. My land, my pond. You have no right here." She skimmed the papers for 2 seconds before tossing them at my feet. "The HOA says otherwise," she said smugly. "Take it up with them." "There's no HOA authority here," I said, voice rising. "My land's outside your boundaries. Your rules don't apply." Cheryl smiled, sharp and predatory. "We'll see," she said, pulling out a neon lure. "If there's water and fish, it's public. I'm enjoying my day." Anger surged, hot and heavy. This wasn't ignorancy, it was deliberate. She was daring me to escalate. Without another word, I turned and walked back to the house, her humming trailing behind like a taunt. That was her last carefree trip to my pond. I spent hours fortifying my defenses, ordering legal no trespassing signs, calling the sheriff to confirm my rights, sketching plans for a fence. I drove to the county office, where a clerk named Marla pulled my records. "Clear as day," she said, printing certified copies. "Your pond, your water rights, no public access." Armed with documents, I felt a flicker of control. Maybe Cheryl would back off when faced with proof. But I knew better to twist reality before admitting defeat. The next morning, that knot in my gut tightened. From my porch, I saw Cheryl's SUV parked by the pond. There she was, fishing like nothing had happened. I marched down with my documents, Boomer at my side. Without a word, I held out the deed and water rights, certified by the county. "You're trespassing. Leave, or I call the sheriff." Cheryl plucked the paper, glanced at it, and tossed it in the dirt. "Cute," she sneered. "HOA rules still apply." "They don't," I snapped. "You've got no authority. I'll file a trespassing report." She laughed, a shrill sound that made Boomer bark. "Think anyone cares about a grumpy old man hoarding a pond? This is about community." I stared, incredulous. She acted like I was hogging emergency supplies, not defending my land. I turned back to the house, knowing arguing was like shouting at a brick wall. Inside, I called the sheriff, who promised action if she didn't leave. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist letter. By afternoon, I heard voices. Peeking through the trees, I saw Cheryl had brought back up 3 women from the sub-BVY shown, each with fishing poles, coolers, and chairs, their speaker blasting the same country song on repeat. It was a full-blown party, a blatant middle finger to my rights. I grabbed my phone and recorded everything, every laugh, every cast, every beer can tossed. I had a rock-solid case. The next day, I filed a complaint at the courthouse, submitting VY Deo's documents and the cease and desist. The clerk, a wiry man with thick glasses, stamped my papers. "Happens too often," he said. "People think they're entitled to what they see." At the sheriff's office, Deputy Harris, a stocky guy with a buzz cut, watched the footage, chuckling when one of Cheryl's friends tripped over a cooler. "Open and shut," he said. "We'll issue warnings. If they return, we'll arrest." I drove home as storm clouds rolled in, the weight of trouble brewing heavy in the air. That evening, Cheryl's SUV pulled up, flanked by another car. She stepped out, her usual smirk replaced by a scowl, beside a man in a cheap suit clutching a clipboard, some HOA flunky. "Good evening," he said, striding up. "I'm Mr. Vance, HOA board. We've had complaints about your misuse of community resources. I leaned against the porch rail, almost amused. This is private property. I've got deeds, water rights, legal protection. Your HOA has no power here. Vance hesitated, glancing at Cheryl, who nodded fiercely. We'll investigate, he said, puffing up. You could face fines. Good luck, I said. You're trespassing now. Leave, or I call the sheriff. Cheryl's face reddened, but Vance pulled her back to the cars. They sped off, leaving dust and empty threats. The real line was crossed the next morning. A battered pickup arrived, 2 men in neon vests stepping out. One held a clipboard, the other a duffel bag. Here for an HOA and environmental inspection, clipboard said. I didn't request one. I snapped. My land, my pond. You're trespassing. They waved papers claiming community resource checks. Then the second guy pulled a canister labeled pond treatment chemicals from the bag. My stomach dropped. They meant to poison my fish. Get off my land, I barked. They hesitated, then backed off, muttering about noncompliance. I knew Cheryl was behind it. This wasn't just trespassing, she was sabotaging my pond. That night, I rigged trail cameras around the property, hidden high and set to motion detection. At midnight, Boomer's growl woke me. Flashlights bobbed near the pond. I crept out, spotting 3 figures, Cheryl among them. Dump it, she hissed, urging a guy with a chemical canister. I hit them with my flashlight's brightest beam. Drop it, I shouted. They froze. Cheryl screeched, slipped, and splashed into the shallows. The guy dropped the canister and bolted, the others scrambling after. Cheryl floundered, soaked and furious, then fled to her SUV, tires screeching. I retrieved the canister algaecide, toxic in high doses, meant to kill my fish. My fist shook with rage. At the sheriff's office, I handed over the canister and footage. Deputy Harris's jaw tightened. This is felony vandalism and environmental sabotage, he said. We'll take it from here. Words spread like wildfire. Cheryl's antics had always been outrageous, but this was criminal. The footage of her muddy plunge went viral in local Facebook groups, spawning memes like Pond Queen Flops and Fish Fiasco. The HOA disavowed her, Vance resigned, and Cheryl went quiet, her yard signs vanishing, her smugness gone. In court, I sat with a folder of EVY Denke, Boomer waiting in my truck. Cheryl scowled across the room, her slick lawyer flipping through a thin file, already defeated. My attorney, Rachel, laid out the case deeds, water rights, sheriff reports, and the damning video of Cheryl's chemical plot. The courtroom stifled laughs as Rachel played the clip of Cheryl's muddy fall. Cheryl's lawyer claimed confusion over boundaries and environmental concern, but the judge's face screamed disbelief. On the stand, Cheryl insisted the pond seemed communal, but Rachel shredded her with proof of signs, warnings, and her own mocking laughter on tape. Cheryl slumped, her excuses crumbling. The judge's verdict was firm: guilty of trespassing, attempted vandalism, and environmental endangerment. Cheryl faced steep fines, restitution, and a restraining order barring her from my land. Her face twisted with rage as she stormed out. Outside, I let the Tory sink in, not just the legal win, but protecting what was mine from someone who thought she could take it. Driving home, the sun broke through, lighting the pond in gold. Boomer barked, tail wagging. We're going home, boy, I said. Cheryl vanished from the neighborhood, her house neglected, rumors swirling of a move. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles, sharing stories of Cheryl's past antics, purging her influence. I rebuilt the dock, planted flowers, and hosted quiet gatherings for respectful folks. One evening, I carved a sign for the new gate: private pond. Fishing by invitation only. Cheryl excluded. Neighbors laughed, and even the mayor chuckled at a community event. Fishing with a shy kid named Eli, I taught him to respect the pond, passing on its peace. As seasons turned, the pond thrived, koi swimming, willows shading, my sanctuary untouched. Standing by the frozen water under winter stars, Boomer at my side, I whispered to the land. You're safe. The quiet was my Tory, earned through patience, principle, and a fight that proves some things are worth defending,